Assassin's Creed has been around for 18 years now. It's been a long time since the original trilogy came out, and the whole thing was supposed to end with Desmond's sacrifice preventing the annihilation of the entire Earth. For my money, we could have stopped right there. Literally, where else do you go after threatening the entirety of existence and cleanly ending the arc of your main character? But the franchise just made too much cash. So they made another game, and another, and another, and just like that, 9 extra games, and 13 years later, here I am playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. Before that, I do gotta give some credit to Ubisoft for what they did with the Animus system. It is a perfect plot device to fabricate an entire story out of nowhere. Pick a significant time period in history, make up a random person that connects to your ancestor main character, and give them some mysterious, rich Templar cult that pulls the strings from the shadows as antagonists. It's so easy I can make one up right now. Let's see, we're in Tenochtitlan during the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire in 1520. You're the son of an Aztec priest that is part of the Assassin's Creed. Templars among the Spanish conquistadors are really here to find an ancient powerful relic hidden deep in one of the Aztec temples, and you're preventing it. You can have that one for free. Honestly, I'm surprised you haven't had an AC game in a more jungly area yet. Anyways, the Animus as a framing device was a great idea, and its subplot related to the Templar conflict was integrated just well enough to break up the historical segments and give everything you're doing in the simulation more meaning. Over time, the Animus got less and less use. Up to AC Valhalla, there would still be present-day sections with semblances of a plot that mostly had to do with somebody trying to resurrect Juno. You know, the lady that was going to cause the world to end. It's all vague enough that you can just go, look, the bad people are doing the bad thing, and construct a motivation for your present-day character to prevent it. As of AC Mirage, they've done away with present-day protagonists entirely. Shadows specifically has an entity called The Guide, speak to you, who I've only seen represented as a cheeked-up digitalized human. This guide is in conflict with the Animus ego for a reason that we don't really get to know. All of this is represented in the opening cutscene, one digitalized Animus gauntlet, and a brief cutscene at the end of some optional quests at the end of the game. Maybe this is set up for future games, but it'd be nice if the Animus subplot was at least a little self-contained. The usual through-line narrative of Assassins vs Templars has also practically vanished. AC1 started out with an entire fortress and armies of Templars. Throughout the later games we only see singular instances of each. Shadows barely spends time on it at all. Instead, we hunt down power-hungry warmongers who are only connected to the topic around 3 corners. With the Animus and Templar storylines practically vanishing, Assassin's Creed games have lost most of their identity. Most mechanics were based around the synchronization elements, and a lot of the UI flavor revolved around the Animus. Now we've devolved to generic action game mechanics, health bars and potions, crouching in bushes, or hour-long sword fighting sessions. The very distinct elements the AC franchise carried have been minimized for broader and broader appeal. To the point where Ubisoft is now just making an amalgamous mass of every marketable trait you can think of, somehow appealing to everyone and no one at the same time. So after 5 games of the exact same formula, if you're counting Origins onwards that is, you'd think the Ubisoft team can learn from their past games and just focus on refining the experience. Create a more detailed world, make movement and combat more engaging, or improve the UI. And Shadows did take some steps in the right direction, but it also utterly failed at some of the most basic elements that any game needs. The absolute lack of care and attention shown here left me dumbfounded. Starting with head-on combat, as the Shadows team has specifically put emphasis on it. The second character straight up isn't an assassin, he's just a dude that fights really well. Let me say first that I don't like the AC combat formula, not in this franchise, not when other games do it. It boils down to just spamming the attack button 90% of the time. Sometimes the enemy forces you to do specific other moves by blocking, and you get a generic dodge button for enemy attacks that are essentially always the same. Shadows and its predecessors iterated on the system quite a bit to mixed effect. Enemies now have parable attacks, and ones that have to be dodged, so you'll need to press the right button between the 2 of them. In boss fights, these attacks are mixed in different orders until you get to attack again, so there's some extra complexity added through that. Shadows also gives you rations as health potions instead of a regenerating health bar, which just ended up being tedious to me. Look, I'm not playing Assassin's Creed for the combat, just as I'm not playing Red Dead Redemption for the fistfights. It's a mechanic that has to be there so you have at least one surefire way to kill enemies. But honestly, the fun part in Assassin's Creed is doing everything to avoid head-on combat. Come on, it's in the name. To me, Assassin's Creed is really at its best when it turns an area into a stealth puzzle, encouraging you to use all tools at your disposal, be it ranged, environmental or otherwise, to clear out an entire camp while staying entirely undetected. Unfortunately, Ubisoft's team has somehow deluded themselves into thinking that 1v5ing random grunts with the exact same 2 attacks is God's greatest gift to gaming. And to put more emphasis on it, all of the creative ways that avoided head-on combat are now much less accessible. Ranged weapons are either less available in number or much slower to use. Even then, they won't usually one-shot anybody but the small grunts. The level design rarely encourages creative use of the environment anymore. Most places are just bland combination of houses, bushes and walls on a flat plane. The assassinations? I sure hope you're not underleveled, otherwise any of the bigger enemies won't die in one hit. If you aren't, then there's also just guys that you can't take out stealthily until you unlock a skill for it. Even then, there's targets on the quest spot that will just hit you with the no backstab jutsu. Also, is that guy drinking a fucking health potion? Bigger bosses will generally require 2 or 3 backstabs to fully take out. If you skill into all of the assassin traits and get gear bonuses, which I did, you can maybe get up to 80% of their health. Still, that means you have to de-aggro the enemies and go back into hiding for a second assassination, which is a bunch of waiting in the best case and impossible in the worst case. If you ever have to choose between the 2 characters when fighting a boss, just pick the big man over here, don't bother playing it smart. Speaking of, the whole 2-character swap dynamic is pretty underdeveloped. Swapping mid-fights or in hostile areas is not something you can do, and they hit you with the loading screen every time you change characters. The mechanic very rarely gets explored, and when it does, you don't really get a say in it. That 15-minute long anima section enables you to hot swap in specific spots, and in the final boss fight, your characters are switched halfway through. That's it, there's nothing else. It's crazy that the tech for hot swapping characters exists, but didn't get implemented into the main game in any way. Feels like a missed opportunity. Each character is specialized towards their specific playstyle. Yasuke is more geared towards head-on fighting, but parkours slowly or sometimes not at all. He also can't assassinate silently. Naoe can do all the stealthy climbing and killing, but ending up in direct fights with her makes the AC combat system feel like even more of a chore than it already is. On paper that doesn't sound like a big deal, the players can choose what kind of playstyle they prefer. In fact, you get prompted before most missions which character you want to pick. The problem is that most of the missions are the same no matter what, and most of them are to a degree more oriented towards stealth or combat. So you end up having to make an educated guess whether the upcoming mission is more of an infiltration deal, or as I just said, a boss fight where assassination is barely even an option. At that point I would have preferred the game to pick the character for me, like it already does in a few specific missions, and design areas around their strengths and weaknesses more specifically. In the end, it's just another dude whose gear I have to continually keep upgrading before my damage drops off. Yep, there's still a leveling system which really just makes sure you go into the open world and get some experience points before being able to go back to the main story. Cause doing it underleveled is painful. Just being a few levels down makes every enemy a tank. Enemies also level up with you, making sure they always present a challenge even when backtracking. Sounds good if you think about it for 3 seconds, but really doesn't that just make the entire leveling system obsolete? You get a fake sense of progression through the numbers going up, when in reality you're doing the same amount of damage to the same guy throughout the entire game. The gear and leveling system just keeps you up to par with the game's scaling, or gatekeeps you into doing more open world bullshit when it decides you haven't played long enough. There's at least some more depth behind the combat system and the skill trees and gear that lets you spec into a varied amount of specializations, and a hideout system improving your resources like rations and kunai. You earn those by doing tasks in the open world, we'll get to that later. That being said, the combat system is not my biggest gripe with Shadows. Overall the system is fine with what it's trying to achieve, it's just achieving the entirely wrong thing for an Assassin's Creed game. What really fascinated me in the worst way possible was Shadow's story, and especially the way it is presented. I will talk about most of the story here, so spoilers if you want to for some reason play the game after this video. The gist of the narrative is a warlord trying to take over Japan through lots and lots of war. The father of the main character entrusts her with a very special box, which she loses. In an attempt to get it back, she gets gravely wounded and her father killed by a group of very secret special people. Then a different warlord helps you take out the first one, but it turns out he betrayed you, and that second warlord is part of the secret evil group who stole your box, so now you're hunting down all the evil group members to get your box back. Now Shadows uses its 2 different characters, Yasuke and Naoe, to tell the story from both of their perspectives. Even though we only unlock Yasuke like 5 hours in, the implied drama between them starts off right away, and oh boy, there's a lot of drama. Let me detail how Shadows spends its first hour to introduce you to its story. We start with Yasuke arriving in Japan through Portuguese priests and meeting Warlord number 1, Nobunaga. Yasuke ends up serving him, and fast forward a little bit, they wage a whole lot of war. The combat tutorial is Yasuke slaughtering villagers trying to defend themselves. Next we switch to the tutorial section for the main character number 2, Naoe, fighting the same war from the other side. She is tasked to retrieve this extremely important box from a grave, but when she makes it there, a samurai intercepts and knocks her down. She gets rescued by her father in a very emotional scene, and they take shelter somewhere else.
I should not have put you there. My oath.
Her father is apparently very hurt, even though we saw none of that happen beforehand, but oh well. Naoe wants to get that box back, so she tracks down the samurai in a nearby castle and manages to successfully retrieve it. She then gets intercepted again outside of the castle by the Box Stealer clan. Her father, who has magically healed from his grave wounds in the 15 minutes it took us to retrieve the box, tries to help again, but gets mortally wounded on screen this time. The gang blabbers a bit and decides to let the two suffer while taking off with the box.
Let them suffer. Let them die in pain.
Fine. We have what we came for.
We then get a very drawn-out, gut-wrenching death scene, even with a desperate Call of Duty campaign crawling moment and a lot of crying, followed by the title text popping on screen. I know I'm cutting around a lot here, but this entire final cutscene lasts over 7 minutes. Shadows really takes its time with every little sprinkle of despair that it's serving you, and I don't feel like padding my video runtime that much. So in this first hour of the pre-title drop intro sequence, we've had like 10 minutes of tutorial combat, and another 10 minutes of infiltrating a castle as an assassin. The other 40-something minutes are a barrage of cutscenes depicting boring political intrigue, war, violence, sadness, death, and just general despair. And let me tell you, it perfectly sets the scene for the rest of the game. Immediately after this character-defining moment, in the death of Naoe's father, we get a flashback right back to her dad being alive again, and the both of them practicing together, instantly defeating all of the emotional impact it might have had. What's more is that we then go on a little mission to beat up some poachers hinting at the invasion that we just spent the last hour witnessing. What kind of fucking storytelling is this? They've somehow managed to invent backshadowing. Even then, the foreshadowing within the scene is resolved 20 seconds later, and the game is so proud of it that it rubs it in your face.
The peasant Ashigaru. They were a warning.
We then get thrown into the present again, but there are more chunks of flashbacks depicting Naoe and her father. This is one of the few somewhat interesting relationships in the game, and you've instantly destroyed any investment in it I could have had because one of its characters died before the title even dropped. This could have worked somewhat well if we unflashbacked the whole thing, so that I can just get a little attached to the two characters, but if you kill the guy before he even gets to have double-digit dialogue lines, I just don't care.
We are together. Always.
Then we get a little bit of a recovery montage, and Shadows finally sends us on a way to explore the world and hunt down your first member of the Box Stealer clan. Now, an opening where your main character loses things important to them can be a powerful motivator, but holy shit, I can only take so much sadness. AC Shadows doesn't really stop after the intro either. Pretty much all of the subsequent dialogue consists of political intrigue, epic sadness caused by war, and contemplative semi-poetry about our worth as humanity.
Its potential.
Every piece of dialogue is either purely pragmatic,
Hello. Do you sell special kosode?
All of my kosode are special.
Enough for a tea ceremony?
or I'm 14 and this is deep material.
Dear child, so many people demand a price. I try to bring a pinch of balance into the world. What I give is freely given.
And I know AC dialogue is already dry, but it feels like the writing team only thought up templates for the dialogue pieces and nobody remembered to flesh them out. Somebody have an emotion, please. Oh my god. It doesn't help that Naoya is just interacting with strangers in different places most of the time, so there's no way to create any interesting character relations. The kid that we meet during the recovery cutscenes gets the closest to actually forming some kind of bond with anyone, but he doesn't show up much later on. I was hoping our two main characters could at least get something going, and the cutscene where they finally link up at least manages to mix some character development with sending a poignant message about the futility of revenge. Unfortunately, the in-game swapping mechanic means the two will only ever exist next to each other in cutscenes, and then they're usually talking to another person with a focused objective. So the conversations, if you can even call them that, stay brief and kept to the point. The hideout does have some side quests and they want to explore their relationship more, but to be honest, maybe we're better off with only pragmatic template dialogue.
Let's start light. Tell me a joke.
Why must samurai always battle one another? Because there is only one way for a samurai to get ahead. Ahead. I did not say it was a good joke.
This quest felt about as awkward as a terrible stand-up set. The voice acting isn't doing this any favors either. Naoya's actor is decently expressive, but everybody else just drones out their lines and calls it a day. Most of the time we get the classic Creed accent. I don't even know what this inflection is supposed to convey at this point.
Blades are for vengeance. But vengeance and mercy cannot stand together.
Hopeful epicness? It's something about them distinctly pronouncing each word that just makes it really boring to listen to, even when they try to put some emotion into it. Maybe playing Red Dead Redemption just before this one spoiled me on character animation and dialogue, but most of this is a disaster. The unexpressive faces and stiff bodies together with the flat and boring conversations make Shadow's cold climates and deceptive stone faces that much harder to bear. I understand this is supposed to be an epic war saga full of sacrifices, but we're really just sad maxing and depression pilled at this point. If there's nothing else to create at least a little bit of contrast, then all the sad violence loses its meaning real fast. I know historical accuracy is a big deal for the AC franchise, but let's face it, history was kinda just sad most of the time. It's not like the franchise has ever perfectly adhered to reality. Hell, this game has a fucking Attack on Titan collab quest that I accidentally stumbled upon, and I actually had a good time with it because some exciting shit happened for once. Seeing these ice pillars after 10 plus hours of staring at the same 3 Japanese buildings was pretty refreshing, even if the sequence was very linear. On that note, I'm also not feeling the Japanese-English accent for many of the NPCs. I don't know if that's an inclusivity thing, all power to them if it is, but most of the time it just sounds like bad English instead of emulating anything cultural.
Please have a look.
Shadow's pacing doesn't help all this either. It essentially has two modes: cutscene barrages with tiny gameplay intermissions, or open world free roaming on the hunt for your new assassination target. With the former being 95% of the storytelling and the latter being 95% of the gameplay. Not to mention the fact that most cutscenes are just in-game rendered shot-reverse shot conversations. There's maybe a little over 10 actual cinematic cutscenes in the game. I think this lack of mixing gameplay and storytelling is what creates a lot of problems here. The writers know that just sitting there listening to cutscenes gets boring, so they keep conversations 10 to 20 seconds each. But because everybody takes so long to get a sentence out, we really only have time for the bare minimum. Let's take this little cutscene about Naoya's broken instrument, for example.
No.
Thank you for this. It has reminded me of something very important.
What's that?
A promise.
We as the player already know that it's important to her. This flashback scene is literally just something we've seen 15 minutes ago. This would have been a good opportunity to talk about the instrument and what it means to her, just anything substantial about it. Doesn't even matter, what matters more is that we get to see how the two characters interact. Instead we get a whopping 3 lines. The little man even asked the questions and all you have is this vague bullshit? Come on, this is how every conversation in the game goes. Everybody's either trying to move the plot along or wants to sound very epic and mysterious. Let's take your very first target from the Box Stealer clan as an example. This whole quest took about an hour. Here's what I did in terms of mandatory gameplay to complete it. Chase down a guy for 2-ish minutes, which only took me that long because I got lost for a second, and fight like 5 guys on a boat to take their sil, which I didn't do, I just looted the chest and left. That took like 5 minutes max, including traveling. Then add another 5 minutes for me climbing a ship and fiddling with my settings a bit. The entire rest of this is listening to people and watching cutscenes for a good 45 minutes. The climax of this entire quest was whether I was able to turn the T-bowl in the correct direction, because it would be rude not to. At least let me shoot the lady myself. This is by far the worst example. Most subsequent quests are more balanced and just focus on locating and hunting your targets, by doing all the usual assassin stuff. But it's also the very first big quest. It's really not a great first impression in combination with the dry-ass presentation. After that you spend about 25 hours of gameplay hunting down all the Box Stealer clan members, and literally none of them know jack shit about the box.
The box. You're a leader. I want to know everything.
You cut down my men, invade our home, to inquire about a box.
This exact cult hunting storyline has been recycled since Origins, setting up a main antagonist group so that you as a player get to target evil guys in as many different regions as possible. It seems like this is the only way Ubisoft knows how to set up a structure for their open world games, and Shadows truly shows its flaws. It did not feel like I was making progress in any way while working my way through the Box Stealers, nor did they seem connected at all, which only made the 20-something hours you spent doing it drag on even more. When you eventually get to the second warlord guy that betrayed you and kill him, he finally directs you to the mysterious leader of the Box Stealer clan. And it's some guy that got mentioned like 3 times at the start of the game. He just gives you the box in exchange for plot advancement. And that's where we start actually getting to the Templars vs Assassins plotline. Oh yeah, the box had some kind of magic jewel in it, I don't know, who cares. The rest of the game is Yasuke's backstory being resolved since the master of his slave ship was a Templar, which is him hunting like 1.5 dudes. Then the game ends on a cliffhanger whether now his mother is still alive or not. I didn't really mention her, but trust me, it was very sad just like the rest of the game. Spoilers, she's alive and they resolve all of that in the DLC. I guess there could have been a climactic boss fight with this other guy who I also only saw a few times throughout the game, but at that point I was really tired of the boss fights and decided to for once not perpetuate the infinite cycle of violence Shadows is so in love with. Lastly, let's talk about the open world a bit. This video spawned as kind of a side tangent of a bigger video about open world specifically. It kinda just ballooned in size, still is I guess, so take this as part of the prologue to it. And you know what, for an Assassin's Creed game it's actually alright. Okay, it's complicated. Generally, since the big open world shift in AC Origins, there's been a lot of emptiness in between the actual cities and encampments. The ones that are fully designed and plotted out for gameplay. You'll have a few filler activity like patrols, animals to hunt for resources, or small hideouts and caves to loot. The games rely a ton on the compass and map markers for you to even find interesting side activities, which are in service to a gear system that nobody wanted in the first place. But if you don't upgrade your stuff and keep leveling, you'll end up too weak to progress the story without wanting to end it all. Shadows didn't really change that formula, but it made some tweaks that helped out a good amount. As for the empty spaces, they're still there. Instead of wide empty deserts, you've got intraversable mountains now, making the world look more filled out, but more than half the map is still utterly redundant. Oh, I should always stick to the path, Mr. Tooltip Man? Thanks, I didn't want to have fun exploring anything anyways. In fact, I'd prefer empty deserts because that means I can actually get to my destination faster. The steep hills mean you really have to stick to a path or you're not getting anywhere. That gets especially annoying when there's only one specific way to get to a location. At that point I just turned on the pathfinding feature even though it's the antithesis of open world gameplay to me. It would literally take me longer to figure out what turns to take in order to get past a big mountain than just pressing 2 buttons and having a snack break for a few minutes. The classic high-rise observational towers are still there, of course. You know, the ones where you do a parkour challenge to reveal the map and a bunch of points of interest around you. Well, Shadows decided we don't need the parkour part anymore. Instead you just press Q 5 times to pull yourself up the same building over and over. Once up there, you're made to look around and manually scout the new locations, which is a nice little touch. Just wish it didn't come at the cost of climbing them actually being fun. Sticking with the map, Shadows also does quest markers a little differently. You're usually not shown explicit directions right away. There's a brief description of your target's general location and you're made to find it yourself. Now you can use the scouts from your hideout to at least narrow it down to a specific area. Once there, you just have to use your eagle vision to find the blue dot around you. I'm pretty neutral on this, it only makes sense that you don't instantly know where all your targets are, and exploring your surroundings is encouraged in the process. But sometimes it just ends up being tedious when the directions are a little vague and you're out of scouts. Still a nice upgrade over Origins Eagle Vision that just gave you a top down of literally everything there is to know around you. Maybe communicating more information in forms of flavor text would have been cool, but I understand that a lot of people would probably not bother reading it. The rest of Shadow's open world is filled out with a few different activities and locations that are mostly in service of upgrading your character or hideout, as is usual. Some of them are just locations that maybe have a chest in them if you're lucky. The cities usually have certain districts with hostile NPCs and a whole lot of stuff to loot. Most of it materials that can upgrade or construct new buildings in your hideout. These can give you stuff like better gear or healing or more scouts to use. In terms of merchants and stores, we're not offered a lot. It's just a dude standing around that'll either sell weapons or cosmetics. Money barely matters anyways here. I've really only used it on purchasing these little apartments for fast travel spots. Then you get some big castles which have one juicy loot box that is locked behind taking out some elite enemies nearby. Usually gets you some good gear. And that's it for the cities. Outside of quests, all other buildings and NPCs get no use at all. Then you got shrines and temples, which are your main source for knowledge points. These let your skill into higher ranks of your masteries, meaning you don't want to pass up on them if you're keen to do any of the cool abilities and double assassinations. And they're really boring. Either you're playing hide and seek with a piece of paper, or you're praying in a few different locations. No, really, you go up to a wooden booth and press E in a specific spot 3 times. If you're in the late game, they might even spice it up and hit you with 4 shrines. Wow! You can use the eagle vision to at least find all these spots pretty quickly, and if you're lucky, the temples have hostile presence, so you have something to do while finding them. In terms of parkour challenges, Shadows keeps it very slim. There's kofuns, which are more or less tombs with some loot in them. They mostly consist of swinging on your hookshot and following the preset climbing ledges. You really just end up pressing the buttons you're made to instead of independently figuring out a path up the wall. Then you have these obstacle course paths, which consist of following the parkouring footsteps of a man who's been dunked in yellow paint from head to toe. These are as singular as the kofuns and don't have a timer on them, so there's not much excitement to them either. If you're just trying to level up, there's plenty of targets to assassinate for easy XP. These also tie into the quest system, which has been a positive surprise overall. The quest board is neatly organized and has a variety of activities to choose from. A lot of them end up tying back into giving you a group of targets to assassinate, but that's what the game is about, so you won't see me complaining about it. There's still a good amount of self-contained quests that are either initiated through the hideout, through coming across information in confidential papers, or getting information from a stranger you met. While the notion of having to catch up with the main storyline sucks, I can appreciate that the process of catching up is at least pretty fun. With all that being said, AC Shadow's open world still overly relies on its map markers and compass to do anything. The open world seems more like an intermediate zone to do your little playground activities until it's back to go inside for the main story. In that way, the entire AC franchise still has a lot of catching up to do compared to other open worlds like Elden Ring or Red Dead Redemption 2. Shadows only took baby steps by at least putting more care into the open world compared to previous titles. So is it time to stop making Assassin's Creed games? Let's be real, that's a stupid question. They're gonna make more AC games anyways. They coded up a whole specific launcher for it and already announced 2 more games being in development. A better question is whether you should keep playing Assassin's Creed games. This isn't even about the money or sending a message to the industry. Playing Shadows was a soul-sucking experience that I can't recommend to anyone unless they're making a video about it. There are so many games out there that are fun and competently made with love that deserve to be played over the grueling 40-something hours you have to put into Shadows and most other ACs to make it through the game. Making you sit through uninteresting and basic dialogue, stiff and inhuman-feeling character animations, and fake deep slam poetry. Shadow's story and world are entirely devoid of joy, life, and dare I say it, whimsy. It cares so much about depicting the burdens of war and the futility of vengeance that it just ends up emotionally grinding you down to the point of not giving a shit. There are games that can pull off a fully serious story because it keeps up the action and stays exciting, like some Call of Duty campaigns. There's games that can convey the grimness of violence in a powerful way by framing an engaging gameplay system like Darkest Dungeon. But when you poorly apply the style to a 40+ hour open world game whose stories are driven by character interactions, then it just feels like a really long depressive episode. Mechanically, there's some really fun parts here. Shadows pushed the generic AC combat system to an iteration that I almost had fun with. The mastery and gear systems actually had intriguing modifiers and abilities that I wanted to unlock. And surfing around massive castles, taking out guards one by one was fun when I was actually allowed to do it. All of that is just assembled in the worst way possible, hiding the somewhat fun gameplay between groan-inducing cutscene avalanches, boring travel sections, left-click spam combat, uninteresting locations, and an utter disrespect for your time.